Are you guys ready? Are you guys ready for this lesson? We just got out of bed and the boys are still groggy and sleepy, and we have lots of canning to do, so we're doing pairs right here. Right there. Can you see them?
Yep.
So we're getting these pairs done, and we have 21 boxes of pairs that we need to do, but that's starting today. And what else do we have going on? Ooh, we got tickets to a football game tonight, so we're really excited. Daniel has to work, so he probably won't be able to go. But, well, everybody, today we are going to focus on phrases and clauses and help you understand them. I think that they are confusing, so I think you guys need to really pay attention. Because if I think they're confusing, then I know that you think they're confusing, right? So, now it's not really hard to understand truly what a phrase actually is, but it's sometimes hard to pick them out and understand what they are once you're in the sentence. So words formed together that does not have a subject and a verb, they're phrases. Okay? So if they do not have a subject and verb together, then they are a phrase. And you can have all different kinds of phrases in a sentence, you guys. Did you know that? Mm-hmm. All different kinds: verb phrase, noun phrase, prepositional phrase. You can have adjective phrases, adverb phrases. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So all different kinds of phrases. Also, what a phrase is, it's a musical thought. So just because you see phrase, that doesn't mean that it only means grammar. It's an essential part of the sentence. Oh, there's another grammar one. And they're dance movements. Do you guys learn that when you're clogging? Okay, now we're going to talk about grammar phrases though. Grammar phrases. Now phrase comes from the Greeks. How do we know that?
Because it's PH.
Yeah, you're right. It's a PH right here. We're going to talk about the grammar part of the phrase, and it comes from the Greek line. How do you know that?
Because of the PH.
Excellent, good job. It's because of the PH, and it is a single unit when it works as a phrase. So there are a bunch of little words put together, and they work as one single unit when it's considered a phrase. Now we're first going to talk about adjective phrases, boys, because these are the parts that actually are confusing. A lot of phrases aren't confusing. Like prepositional phrases are crazy easy to understand. But when you're trying to understand them as an adjective phrase, it can be a little bit confusing. So adjective phrases, they have one or more than one word. So when you have an adjective, they have one or more than one word, and it acts like a single adjective would. And they also describe nouns. Okay? What do adjective phrases do?
They describe nouns.
Exactly, Paul. They describe nouns. So now let's look at this sentence right here. The police manage very stressful lives. What do you think the adjective phrase is right there?
Very stressful lives.
Awesome, very stressful lives. Can you see that, Dan? So this right here would be called the adjective phrase. But what's that?
It's an adverb.
It's an adverb. So just because this is an adverb doesn't mean it's not part of your adjective phrase. So if you have this right here describing the noun, you know that it's an adjective phrase, even though this is an adverb. Now that doesn't mean this isn't an adverb, but this is part of the adjective phrase. Does that make sense? That's why it's a little bit confusing, because you're like, well, there's an adverb there, but you just count every word that's in there. You can have articles in there. You can have other things in your adjective phrase if it's describing the noun. Adjective phrases describe what?
Noun.
Nouns and pronouns, right? They do not describe verbs or adverbs or adjectives. They describe nouns and pronouns, and that's what this, look at this, police manage. Now, what is this? Is it singular or plural? Daniel says this is singular. What do you think? Singular or plural?
It's plural. Plural.
What kind of noun is this? This is called a collective noun, but this is a very unusual collective noun. Most collective nouns, they take the singular, but oftentimes police will take the plural. Not always, but oftentimes police will take the plural. So that means since this is taking the plural, what do we have here? The plural verb. See how this, you don't have the plural S on here? And this is the kind that actually gets a little bit confusing. So if we say the police manages very stressful lives, that actually sounds okay, don't you think? The police manage very stressful lives. Does that sound okay? Both sound fine. So you need to understand, is this going to take the plural or is this going to take the singular? And in this sense, it takes the plural. So be careful with your collective nouns and understanding how you're going to choose your verb, okay? What position, what tense is this verb sitting in? Of it.
Yeah, simple person.
Simple present, and this is third person, right?
Third person, simple present.
Third person, simple present, okay? All right, now let's look at this one. The remarkable but strange pioneer questioned the resourceful, inventive liar. Okay. What do you guys think that the adjective phrase is in there?
Remarkable but strange.
Very good. The remarkable but strange. Remarkable but strange. What else? What else, Paul? You get the next one. Resourceful, inventive, right? That would be your adjective phrase. And oftentimes, some people will count the word that it's describing, but I'm not doing that. So, but some people will count this as the adjective phrase. That's why it's a little bit confusing, because different people have different opinions on how it should happen. But look, these adjectives describe pioneer. See, we have a conjunction in here. It's still, look at, it's a group of words describing this noun. Is it describing a noun? Mm-hmm. Then you know it's an adjective phrase, right? And with adjective phrases, you can have one adjective. It's considered an adjective phrase. So, resourceful and inventive. See how we have a comma here? Because we could say in the inventive, resourceful liar, right? You can switch those. That's why I put the comma here. Okay? See how you're supposed to put a comma between two adjectives that carry the same weight? But this is called an adjective phrase. So what is resourceful, inventive describing?
Liar.
It is. It's describing the liar. These sounds all like nice words until you find out what the subject is, right? Mm-hmm. So liars can be resourceful and they can be inventive, but you have to be really careful on who you work with and who you're with, right? So you need to be really careful with that, and we have experienced that in the past before. So just make sure that you guys are really careful with who you decide to be friends with, because they can be resourceful, inventive, but not good people. Okay, so now let's talk about adverb phrases, or they could be called adverbial phrases. And adjectives can be or adjectival phrases. They are the same thing, but this doesn't sound as scary as adverbial phrase. Adverbial phrases. What is an adverbial phrase? It's the same thing as an adverb phrase. okay? They do the same, they mean the same thing. They're the same function as an adverb phrase, all right? And adjectival, it sounds a little bit scarier. Oh my gosh, I don't know what that means. It's the same thing as an adjective phrase. You just have another suffix on there. But adverbial phrase, that's like, ooh, that sounds more advanced when it's really not, okay? So we have adverb phrases or adverbial phrases. They act as an adverb. But with adverb phrases or adverbial phrases, you have to have 2 or more words. See how our adjective phrases, they could be 1 word, but adverb phrases are not like that. Okay? So remember, 2 adverbs. If the word acts as an adverb, they are adverb phrases. Okay? Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So, now let's look at this sentence. The vitamins are in the bathroom. Well, can you pick out your adverb?
In the bathroom.
Awesome, Daniel. So look at this. We have in the bathroom. See, this is a prepositional phrase, but prepositional phrases act as adverb phrases, and it's describing are. Where are you? You're in the bathroom. You're not in the vitamins, so you know that there's no way that you're in the vitamins. There's no way it's describing this. You are in the are. Look at this. They are playing in the tent trailer. Paul, do you have an adverb phrase in this sentence?
Playing in the tent.
That playing is your verb.
Trailer?
Yeah, in the tent trailer. See how this is a prepositional phrase? And it's telling you where. Where is it? Where? Where? You're in the, where are you? You're in the tent trailer. So that's key word, where. Where are you? Well, you're in the tent trailer. They can also be, to become a better cyclist, Daniel rode twice a day. Can you guys find your phrase in that one?
To become a better.
Very good. To become a better cyclist. See how we have an infinitive phrase right here? But what's it acting as? Is it acting as an adjective phrase or an adverbial phrase?
Adverb.
It's acting as an adverbial phrase because you can't say, well, what's it describing? Is it describing Daniel to become a better cyclist? Is it describing, well, in or where with Daniel? No. Is it describing how? To become a better cyclist, he rode. So see how it's describing road? And so this is your adverb phrase right there. And it's describing here, why did he ride? Why did he become a better cyclist? It's because he rode. So this one is why. This one is where. This one is why. Now you need to remember, adverb phrases can describe verbs, adverbs, and adjectives, right? That's what adverbs do. But most of the time when you actually see them as a phrase, they're going to mostly describe the verb. Okay? So, but I wanted to put them out here. The dying plant was watered after our vacation. So what is your phrase right there?
After our vacation.
Okay, after our vacation, right here.
That's also a prepositional phrase.
Exactly, that's a prepositional phrase describing what? This is an adverb phrase describing was watered, right here. So you can have a bunch of words And even though you have a prepositional phrase, it's describing what. See how it's describing the verb right here? And there's a bunch of little words describing that. But this is describing when. When did we do it? Well, we did it after the vacation. When did we do it? After the vacation. Now, well, adverbs also describe adverbs. The announcement of their wedding was regarded highly outstanding. So that's where I found that it's harder to do an actual adverb phrase. As an adverb, it's so easy to describe. An adverb describes an adjective. It's so easy to describe. An adverb describes, but we're just going to talk about what adverbs describe other adverbs, they describe other adjectives, they describe verbs. So, do we have an adverb phrase in here, boys?
Highly outstanding.
Highly outstanding. What's it describing?
Regarded.
Yeah, so this is an adjective. I mean, this is an adverb phrase that is describing this verb. So this adverb is describing outstandingly. This adverb is describing this adverb, or both of these. It's highly regarded, it's highly outstanding. You can do this one either way. What's this one? Of their wedding.
But it's also prepositional.
You're right. Did I not say prepositional phrase? It's a prepositional phrase. But prepositional phrases are either adjective phrases or adverb phrases. Okay? So that's why it's a little bit confusing, because you're like, well, it's a prepositional phrase. But no matter what, your prepositional phrases have to describe something, and they're either adjective phrases or adverb phrases. Now look how we had verbs, adverbs. Now we're going to talk about adjectives. Adverbs describe verb, adverbs, and adjectives. Now the highly and unusually imaginative baby. Was it there?
Highly and unusual.
So we have highly and unusually imaginative. Is this an adverb phrase or is this an adjective phrase?
Adjective.
This is an adjective because you are describing baby. These right here are adverbs. See how they're describing the adjective. So do you see that? How these two are describing this adjective, but because they're connected to describing the baby, this is the adjective phrase. And some might say, well, that I'm calling the adverb phrase describing this adjective. So we'll have different opinions. Now, remember, adverbs describe how, where, when, and why. How, highly and unusually imaginative. See how it's describing how. So see how we talked about right here. In is where. Where are they playing at? In. Where are they playing at? On. When. We had the when. When was the plant watered? After the vacation. So we have after. And then we also have why. Why are they doing that? So adverbs have a range of functions. They can describe whole clauses also. The entire clause. They can describe that. So, but look at this. Grandma visited our home last week. What's your adverb phrase? It's last week right here. So if we want to do that, what's your subject?
Grandma visited.
Visited.
Home is direct object.
Home is our direct object, right? But what is last week?
It describes visited.
It describes visited. So it comes off of visited right here. And see, this is saying when. When did she visit? It's last week. So if it's answering any of these questions, then you know it's an adverb describing a verb, an adverb, or an adjective, right? So what are the words that, if you have these memorized, you'll be able to pick them out. And then if you ask the questions, then you're going to be able to put them where they need to go. Does that make sense? Let's go over these.
How, where, when, why.
So if you ask these questions, boys, then you're going to be going, oh, where last week, is that an adverb phrase? Does that describe grandma? Is that an adjective phrase? Well, last week, is it describing? That's what you end up doing. But if you start asking the questions, well, how did they visit? No. Where did they visit? No. When did they visit? It completely answers the question when they visited. It was last week, and there you have it. So manner is how, the manner that you do it. And oftentimes you have LYs in the hows. Okay? How did they do it? Highly and unusually imaginative. That's how they did it. But where is the place it happened at? It's like where it's in the tent trailer, right? It's in the bedroom. Also, the purpose is why. Why did they do it? It's the purpose behind it. And then when is time? So, and that's super easy. It's, well, when did it happen? Last week. Also, we have words called qualifiers. And these are adverbs of degrees, like the word very. So we have qualifiers, and these are adverbs of degrees like the word very. Now, very, though, could sit in an adjective phrase, very adorable baby, and that is called an adjective phrase, but that doesn't mean this isn't an adverb describing adorable, right? Okay, and then we have intensifiers. They have an intensity, like extremely. It's very, extremely hard, very hard to can pears by yourself, right? So these, they describe other adverbs. These in qualifiers and intensifiers, they describe other adverbs. Also, qualifiers and intensifiers, they are very similar. And so they get confusing right there. Okay? That's too bad we had to. Okay, so now let's talk about the difference between an adverbial clause and an adverbial phrase. So, adverbial clauses, they have subjects and verbs that go together. Now remember, our subjects and our predicates need to coincide with each other. Once that happens, you have a clause. And typically, adverbial clauses, they have subordinating conjunctions. These adverbial clauses, they are dependent clauses. There are also adverbial clauses. Does that make sense? Once you put that subordinating word onto your clause, you've just made it a dependent clause. But if you're using a subordinating conjunction, it's an adverbial clause. As, because, while, those words.
As, since, if, although, because.
Yeah, yep. Okay, so now an adverbial phrase does not have a subject and a verb. It is not a complete thought. How and why equal adverbs or adverb phrases. These two right here, I know we went over this already, but these two are the ones that are forgotten the most, especially the why. We remember the where, we talked about that. What are the four? That you can ask questions and you can figure out what's going on.
Oh yeah. How, why.
Why, where, and when. How.
Why, where, when.
Right. So if you're asking those questions, then you're going to know, oh, is this an adverb or an adverb phrase? But these two are the two questions oftentimes that are not asked. And so you need to make sure asking these questions also to see if they are an adverb. So what are they again?
How, why, when, and where.
Nice. How, why, when, and where. Okay?
How, why, when, and.
And oftentimes your LYs will be your hows. But you have lots of hows out there that do not have LYs, right? Okay, so now let's talk about a phrase again. Phrase cannot stand alone. Adverbial phrases, they are not a complete thought. They cannot stand alone. They do not have a subject and a predicate. These have subjects and predicates. Your verbs are your predicates. Okay? But they come in small groups of words. They describe nouns, verbs, adjectives, adverbs. That's what your phrases do. So now here's an example, and this is what confuses people. You have a verb phrase. For example, we're needing to pull them out. Can you tell I was outside working when I was doing this? We're needing to pull them out. You can use this all by itself. This cannot stand alone. You can use this all by itself to describe something. You can use it to describe nouns, verbs, adjectives, and adverbs. But unless you put the actual subject onto it, and the subject and the verbs, subject and the predicates, they have to match, right? They have to go together. So if you have your verb needing and it's not matching and it's describing something, then you have a verb phrase. And that's where people get confused. What is that? I know that's a verb. Well, you have a verb phrase. And it describes nouns, verbs, adjectives, and adverbs. So you can also have noun phrases. The growing garden. You can use this noun phrase. See, here's your main noun to describe something. But once you put the verb or your predicate onto this, then it is no longer a verb phrase. It is now a clause. It is no longer a noun phrase. It is now a clause. It could be it could be an adverbial clause. It could be an independent clause. It could be a dependent clause, whatever, but it's no longer a noun phrase. And noun phrases, they can sit in as a subject, depending on how you're writing your sentence, or a verb phrase can be your entire subject because it's a small group of words and they describe things. They're working together as something. Does that make sense? Paul, does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay, super confusing. So when you see a verb phrase, you're like, what is that? It's a verb phrase. Okay, and it's a part of speech. Okay, so once the noun or verb is included, the small group of words is a clause. Okay, so a phrase is an expression. So we have prepositional phrases, adjective phrases, adverb phrases, noun phrases, verb phrases. These are like the main phrases. We're not gonna go over the other ones right now. These are your main phrases. Now, we talked about this word, extremely. Do you remember what it was? We talked about it at the beginning of the lesson.
Verb phrase.
It's an intensifier, okay? The temperature is extremely hot outside. So here is your adjective phrase, but this is an adverb describing this adjective. But this is an adjective phrase, not an adverb phrase. So remember, very great degrees. Intensifiers mean a very great degree, a very great degree. Adjective clauses describe what? Nouns and pronouns. That's what an adjective clause does. Okay, so they usually begin with relative pronouns. So our relative pronouns are, now these are the 7 main ones that you're going to have them with: which, that, whomever, whoever, say, or whom, whomever, who, whose. And those are relative pronouns. Let's say your relative pronouns again, because this is what's confusing. Which and that can be used in another part of speech. They can be used as different things. And this is what trips people up. Okay, let's say them. Which, that, whomever, whoever, whose, whom, and who. Now, if which, the word which, has an antecedent. So this is what's super confusing, because sometimes it is used as a subordinate word. But if it's used, if which has an antecedent, you know it's a pronoun. So what's an antecedent? Do you guys remember? Okay, the antecedent is the noun that it's referring to. Do you guys get that?
Yeah.
What's an antecedent?
A noun that it refers to.
Right. So if it's referring back to a noun, you know you have a pronoun. Does that make sense? And then you know that you have a relative pronoun. Okay, what's an antecedent? It's the noun that the pronoun refers back to. What's the antecedent, Paul?
A noun that the pronoun refers back.
Right. So a pronoun always replaces a noun, and the pronoun has to have an antecedent. And whatever that pronoun is replacing is the antecedent. That's the same here, a relative pronoun. So if you have which and it is replacing the noun and it could replace the antecedent, then you know that you're using this as a pronoun, not as a subordinating conjunction, not as a subordinate word. Okay, so now let's look at this sentence right here. This sounds a little goofy. These are the geologists. This one doesn't. Period. I brought the shovels for whom? So can we combine these? It sounds goofy having this right here. So we'll rewrite that. So, but see how whom? Can I say for who? I brought the shovels for who? No, because who, it's often in the subject position, but it's a noun position, right? Whom is an object position, and it has to sit in an object. So this is a prepositional phrase. This is the object of the preposition. How many object positions do we have in our language that this could sit in? Right, so we have indirect objects, direct objects, and objects of the preposition. These are the geologists who brought the shovels. Now right here, see why we have to use who? This is your subject and your verb. This right here is an adjective clause describing geologists. Right here is your relative pronoun that is replacing geologists. Do you see that? This is a dependent clause. With this, you know that this can't sit by itself. Who brought the shovels? The geologists brought the shovels. All right? Now, well, can we use the word whom in here?
No.
No, we can't say these are the geologists whom brought the shovels. These are the geologists for whom brought the shovels. That still sounds goofy. You could say these are the geologists for whom I brought the shovels. I mean, so you have to make sure you're using the who and the whom correct. All right? So now let's rewrite this. Let's combine this right here. These are the geologists. How are we going to write this in a sentence? What do you guys think?
whom.
These, oh nice Daniel, for whom I brought the shovels.
No, it's not a question anymore.
Exactly. So this sounded like a question, and this one clears it. Does that make sense? See, look, right here, now, this sounds goofy. You shouldn't do it this way. You need to do it like this. And then, right here, is your relative pronoun. It's describing the geologist. It's whom describing? Is it describing I or describing geologists?
Geologist.
It's describing geologists. These are the geologists for whom. Okay? Now, let's talk about adjective clauses. They also start with relative adverbs. See, these ones are relative pronouns. These can act as subjects. That's what gets people confused. If they're acting as a subject, you have a relative pronoun. But we also have relative adverb. The clauses begin with where, when, and why. So if they're going to begin with where, when, and why, you're going to have an adjective clause. It's going to describe a noun. Okay? Where, when, and why. The dependent clause is connected to its noun. So when you use these words, you're going to have a dependent clause, and it has to connect back to the noun for it to be an adjective clause. All right. Do you have the plant where you and Paul were supposed to put by the tree? What is your subordinating word? What's your relative adverb in there? Where? Is where part of the subject? So you know you have a subordinating word. This is an adverb right here, right? This is a relative adverb, and it's referring back to the plant. This right here is an adjective clause. Does that make sense? Where you and Paul were supposed to put by the tree. It's describing the plant. Do you see that? Okay? This is an adjective. This is an adjective clause. It is a dependent clause. Once you put this subordinating word here, then you have just made a dependent clause. Okay? And it's describing here, and it's an adjective clause. So we have cutting back the plant is the reason why it will regrow with beautiful flowers. So what's our subordinating word there?
Why?
Oh, nice. Okay, so why is describing what? Cutting back the plant is the reason why it will regrow with beautiful flowers. What is why describing?
Reason.
Reason. This is an adjective clause. So what are the three relative adverbs? Where, when, why. These are relative adverbs that can start adjective clauses. Where, when, and why. So right here, we have an adjective clause. This is your adjective clause. Look, your subject, your verb, your subordinating word. But it's referring back to your noun. It's not referring back to the plant. This is the reason why it will regrow with beautiful flowers. What's this? Cutting back the plant. This right here is a verb phrase.
Verb phrase.
See how this right here, so when you started with an ing, and see how then you have your verb, this is your auxiliary verb right here. This whole verb is the subject. This whole verb phrase is the subject. Cutting back the plant is your subject. It goes on a tree on your diagram. This is what confuses people. We're like, well, where's my subject in this sentence? It's right here. It's the verb phrase. See, that's where you get confused. Well, I see the verb, but isn't this the verb? Well, this is a verb phrase acting as a noun. Now let's look at the next sentence. The witches, who were actually mythical, were under my bed. So when I was a child, I would have nightmares. I actually had a ton of nightmares that probably caused this fear of witches, but I would picture them even when I was awake, that their fingers would crawl up the sides of my bed and grab my feet. So I never ever let my feet hang over my bed, ever. And I still to this day do not like to have my feet hang over my bed because of this. Oh, is this a subordinating word?
No.
No, it is not. What is that?
Subject.
We have a relative pronoun right there. We have a relative pronoun right here. What are the 7 main relative pronouns that set up for an adjective? Which, that, whomever, whoever, whose, whom, who. Doesn't matter what order you put it in. They're all but they do it. Which, that, whomever, whoever, whose, whom, and whose. This is, see how this right here? What's your actual clause? Your dependent clause in this sentence. Nice. So this right here, oh, I don't want purple. That right there, this right here is your adjective clause, your dependent clause, starting with a relative what? Pronoun. This is a relative pronoun, right? This is your subject and your verb. This is your subject and your verb. Do you see that? This right here is dependent on your independent clause, but this right here is describing witches. This is an adjective clause. Do you guys see that? All right, Daniel, who is the cutest boy at swim? So see how I did not put commas in this one because I want to make this essential, but this one I don't care if it's essential. So I put commas around here because we really can take this out. So these are both dependent clauses. So Daniel, who is the cutest boy at swim, swam in the same lane as me today. And so, what kind of clause is this?
Dependent.
Okay, it is a dependent clause. Very good, Daniel. It's also an adjective clause. And what is your relative pronoun that is beginning the adjective clause?
Who.
Who, right. So, this is your subject and this is the verb of your dependent clause that is acting as an adjective describing what word? What noun is it this describing?
Daniel.
It's describing Daniel. See how entire clauses can describe one noun or your subject or whatever? In the same way. What is that? Prepositional phrase. And it's describing what? What kind of prepositional phrase is this?
It's an adverb.
It's an adverb phrase describing swam. What did they swim? They swam in the same lane. Oh, in the same lane, right? Paul, who carried the red bricks, helped build the red brick walkway. Okay, Paul, this is yours. What is your adjective clause?
Who carried the bricks?
Nice. This is a dependent, this is your dependent clause. So when you're looking at your paper and trying to fix this, this is what you can see. If you see it starting with these relative pronouns, you know you have a dependent clause.
And then there's also a new paragraph, so.
So you know what's your subject and verb in this adjective clause?
Who?
Who?
And carried.
And carried. Now remember, who, when you're using who, you're talking about a person, all right? When you're using that and which, you would use as what? Other things. But we use who when it's a person or anything that's acting like a person. You could have talking animals like at a fable, and then you can use the word who. All right, so we have who is your adjective clause, and it's describing What noun is this adjective clause describing? This is a dependent clause.
Paul.
Oh, nice. So it's describing, this dependent clause is describing Paul. This is an adjective clause. Okay? Describing Paul, but it's dependent. 4 is the scheduled time when we are studying scriptures. All right? What is your dependent clause here? What is your adjective clause here? Because they're both dependent clauses. Your adjective clauses will be a dependent clause. But it's important to understand an adjective clause describes a noun, right?
4 is the scheduled time.
No, that's your subject and verb of this main clause, this independent clause. That's an independent clause.
When we are.
All right. So when we are studying scriptures, so is this a relative pronoun or would this be an adverb? A relative adverb.
Relative adverb.
Right. There is your relative adverb. It's your subordinating word. It's setting you up. When you're going to diagram this, and you're going to have your diagram here and your diagram here and blah, blah, and you're connecting the words, and we're going to connect time over here. Time. And we want to put when with that. Okay? So we're going to connect when, and it would go on your side word that's connecting this whole clause. Do you guys remember that? But when it is part of the subject and the verb, this isn't, because this is a relative adverb. That's setting up for this adjective clause. What's your subject and your verb? What's your subject and your verb in here?
We
Subject,
are
verb. Oh, and verb.
Studying.
We are studying right here. And then what's being studied? The scriptures. This is your direct object. But this is your adjective clause describing what? Your
time.
adjective clause describing time. When are we going to study? It's the time. All right, so adjective clauses. So we're going to take 2 sentences and create an adjective clause. All right, so I was sitting outside preparing this lesson, and this is the beautiful flower bed. Okay, I'm talking about the front of the house where we created this really pretty flower bed. I experimented for the first time. See how these right here are 2 different sentences. Now, let's put it together. This is the beautiful flower bed, what word are we using? Are we using a relative adverb or a relative pronoun?
Pronoun.
We're using a relative pronoun. So, this is the beautiful flower bed which I experimented for the first time. So, this isn't your subject and verb right here. So, is this an adjective clause right here? What if we did this? What if we put it as a relative adverb? Which one would you want to do? Where? Where I experimented for the first time. See, now we can make that sound better. Where? Where what? Where you experimented with the flower bed. Now you have your subject and your verb. The other one, when we used which there,
It became the subject.
you had a subject and verb. It became a subordinating word. So you had to use, for it to be a relative pronoun, you had to use it as the subject. Does that make sense? If not, it became a subordinating word and then it became something else. But you use the word where and you're using your relative. It becomes an adjective clause and it's going to describe the flower bed. Does that make sense? Okay, is that it? That's it. All right, I hope that wasn't too confusing because this is actually a really confusing lesson to help you understand what kind of clauses and actually be able to find them in sentences. And to block them out and to understand how to use them properly. So anyways, we will see you in the next lesson. Bye guys.
Thanks for watching. Bye.
Bye everybody.